Welcome to Jesus and Me, your place to go for Sunday morning's message from Kingsville Community Church. This week, Pastor Tom Harmon, lead pastor of KCC, speaks on this Canada Day as we celebrate our country and pray for our religious freedoms. And now, here's Pastor Tom.
We're glad that you're here, and I hope that you'll stay in behind and just have some fellowship. We don't do the shake your hand thing in the service anymore because we want people to really connect with each other and have fellowship and not just kind of slap their palm, but to have some time to say hello and to spill coffee on each other or juice. There's some cold juice down there. Have yourself a hamburger, a hot dog. There's Canada Day cake and all of that. And so we just want you to enjoy your time here. If you're a guest with us, God bless you, and we hope you'll love it so much here that you'll just want to come back and be a part of us again as we celebrate this Canada Day. As well, too, I would like to thank the fellows that are a part of the community center. The community center put up a pergola out in the garden, and those guys worked on it all week. And I mean, some of those days were really hot days, and they got that up. They worked really hard at it to get it up for today, because we're going to barbecue underneath it and all of that kind of stuff. So take a look, and we really do appreciate many of those fellows in our community center. You know, we've already said it, we live in the greatest country in the world. I think we live in the greatest place in that greatest country in the world. I mean, Kingsville. I mean, I brag about Kingsville everywhere I go. It is a great little town. And it's got so much to offer. I like to tease the people that live in Leamington. I say, you know, you guys got to come over here to eat in a restaurant because we've all eaten in your restaurants. And we all know the best restaurants are in Kingsville. Isn't that right? And they ask, how did you guys get all the great restaurants? I don't know. We just like to eat. I guess that must be it. But, you know, I mean, Kingsville, we've got all of this building that's been going on. I moved here 16 years ago, and I mean, it was just starting, the boom of the buildings, but it hasn't stopped. People come to our little town. They come from all over Canada. We've met people that have moved in here from the Yukon, from every province, and people that love to come down here and move in here from Toronto as well. It is one of the most sought out places, and we have a lot to offer in Kingsville. You know, we have the migration birds that come in. We have bird watchers come down, and they come down by the hundreds just to watch little birdies and hear little birdies sing, yeah. And then we have the migration of the monarch butterflies, and there's tons of people come down for the monarch butterflies. And I know that's in Leamington, but, you know, I mean, they come to Kingsville to eat. And and then we have, of course, we have the Canada Goose and Jack Miner. That's world famous. I mean, I went down into the Ohio, sitting in the back of a Mennonite cart being by a horse, and the guy going, "So where are you from?" "Kingsville, Ontario." "I've been to Jack Miner's. Have you ever been?" I don't know. He probably got there by a horse, but I mean, that's just all over the place. This great little town that we live in. But I think we're missing something. We really are. We're not marketing the town. There's something we're really missing. And I think we could just get a ton of people here if we just marketed the rising of the fish fly, okay? I mean, we could set up lights down at the park there at Centennial Park when it gets dark. We could serve like sandwiches and burgers, and people could come from Toronto and all over the place to get close to nature and sit under the lights and enjoy the swarming of the fish fly, right? We should mention that to the mayor. Next time you see the mayor, you should say, "Hey, I got a great idea for our town. We need to market the swarming of the fish fly." Yeah. Well, you got to take the good with the bad. And as we barbecue today, we're doing the best that we can not to include any of the fish flies in the barbecue, okay? So we don't guarantee it fish fly free, but we're going to do our best. Enjoy your hamburger. It's free. But we are blessed with abundance, aren't we? We really are. And when we look at our country, what a great country we live in, I mean, we live in this place where there's so much natural stuff. Natural resources. We got oil. Oil, we got it. Gold, we got it. We got iron, we got oil, we got everything. We got coal, we got all of the natural resources. We got wood, we got steel, we got everything. I mean, we are blessed with all that stuff. I heard a statistic today that was just amazing, that Canada has the most lakes than any other country in the world. We've got more than anybody else. Somebody asked me, how much more? How much more? I'm glad you asked me that. If you took all the lakes in the world, in every country in the world, if you took all those lakes, added them all together, Canada has more lakes than all of them put together. That's amazing. I haven't counted them. That's what the guy on the radio said. And I thought, wow, we got water, man. And that's something, because I've been in countries where, you know what, they've got a little lake, and there's 3 countries sharing that one lake for drinking water. And I mean, in Canada, we're swimming in the stuff, right? God has blessed our nation. You think of freedom. One of the things we're praying in our church here, one of our prayer requests for this year is to protect our freedoms, our religious freedoms, because you know what? Our grandfathers and great-grandfathers, they fought and they died to protect those freedoms. And I want to tell you, those freedoms should never be taken for granted. They are still worth dying for today, aren't they? Freedoms, great freedoms that we have in Canada, the freedom for us to meet in an assembly. There's many countries that this, just even meeting together like this, would be against the law. And then security. Oh, we've got the Pacific Ocean on the west coast. We've got the Atlantic Ocean on the east coast. We've got ice and nothing to the north. I mean, we don't have hostile neighbors. We don't have neighbors firing rockets into our backyard. We don't. Thank God we don't. We don't have neighbors that have tanks lined up across their border pointing at us. We don't have that. We don't have neighbors that are invading a piece of our country saying we want it back. We don't have that in Canada. We don't. We are neighbors to one of the greatest countries in the world as well, is the United States. And we have been friends with the United States. And we've been neighbors with them. And what a blessing to enjoy that kind of security in Canada. It's just amazing to have that kind of rich security. And our country is just sort of economically. We're a part of the G7. The G7, that is the 7 richest nations on the planet. We're part of that because God has blessed us economically. Oh, we've got so much to be thankful for, don't we? And even today, we see people wanting to come to our nation just because there's hope here. And they don't have that hope where they are at. I married a couple on Saturday, and they're from Myanmar. I'm not pronouncing it right, but Thailand is close. And you know, I said, well, how did you come to Canada? Well, our parents went into a refugee camp. Well, and they spent years in a refugee camp. Well, why did they do that? Why didn't they just stay in their own country? Because they spent years in a refugee camp, because they wanted to come to Canada, because they believed that for us kids, we could get an education and we could become something. Wow. And even from the United States, we see thousands of people coming into Canada because of fear. Because they would rather be in a basement of a community center in some kind of a makeshift place as a refugee seeking asylum than the fear of being sent back to the country they came from. They would rather do that. And I heard John Tory, the mayor of Toronto, speaking this week on how they are completely out of spaces. They've filled the college dorms. They've filled the community centers. They've filled all the space that they've got because of people coming into Canada because of fear of what? Going back to where they came from. Going back to where they came from the United States because of things down there and the way things have gone. That's not the first time Canada has been the place where people have fled. Back in the 1800s, our area is rich in the history of the Underground Railroad, where the black people escaping slavery came up and settled in places like Harrow and Colchester and Amherstburg, and all through there, the history is rich. And those great people found in Canada a place where they could live and be free. They could have families, they could start businesses, and they have been a blessing. And then again, I remember meeting people when I was a young adult, even just a teenager, basically, 16, 17 years of age. I met young men, many, many young men who had come to Canada, college trained, university trained, because they didn't want to be shipped over to Vietnam in an unjust war. And they became great people in Canada, living in Canada, had their families in Canada, started businesses in Canada, found that Canada was a place of hope. Canada's a great nation. Thank God for Canada. Thank God for the freedoms and the blessings that we have. But you know, as good as they are only temporary, aren't they? They're only temporary freedoms. They're only temporary things. Everything that we have in this world and that you have and that I have, it's just temporary. God offers us something even greater. Can you imagine something in this life, in your life right now, available to you that is even greater than what you're experiencing right now? Something even greater. Because what we have here is temporal, but God offers us something that is eternal. Something that lasts forever and ever. Something that we don't have to miss, we don't have to leave, we don't have to give away, that can never ever be taken from us. And that is not only to be in this great country, in this great dominion of Canada, but to be a part of God's great kingdom that never ends. That never ends. And in that kingdom, there's wonderful things that we can experience that no government can give you in Canada, no parent can give you, no church can give you, but only God can give you by being a part of His kingdom. And one of those things is simply an abundant life. An abundant life. Enjoying God's power. We sang about that, about God being present within us. And what that means, that abundant life, that is a life experiencing a fullness of love. I never experienced love like the love that I experienced when I met Jesus. Wow. It was transformational love. And deep joy, real joy. Joy that doesn't change with the circumstances you're in, but it's just there. And peace that's beyond understanding. Abundant life. Abundant life is one of the things that we have in that kingdom. You can't get that from a country, but you can get it from God's kingdom. And then there's the transformation and the change that takes place in our lives, where God changes our nature from being a world nature, an earthly nature, natural nature, and lifts us and gives us His divine nature as He works in our life and changes us. And then we have this source in God's kingdom. We have this source, direct source to wisdom and guidance. Where the Bible tells us that if we lack wisdom, if we need guidance, all we have to do is go to Him and He'll give it to us. And we have that. And then in His name we have provision and we have freedom. Even people in countries where they're bound in chains can experience God's great provision and freedom. Because these are things that come from the inside. And that's where they're most important. And then, of course, we have through the cross and death of Jesus, we have forgiveness of sins. Your sins completely, totally forgiven. Beautiful. Beautiful. You can't pay for that. A church can't say to you, I forgive your sins. But God does. But God does. He does. And then, as well, we have that eternal promise as being a part of His kingdom, is to live in that kingdom forever and ever in His presence. You see, what we have here in Canada is wonderful, but it is temporal. What Jesus offers us is better, is His kingdom, and it is eternal. But here's the thing, here's the problem, is that many times people get lost. They get lost in all the good things that they have in this world, in this country. They get taken up with all the wonderful economic blessings and all the wonderful blessings that we have in our country. We can get so taken up with that we lose the most important part. We lose the eternal. And Jesus addresses this in the book of Gospel of Luke, chapter 15. Jesus talks to the people about this very thing, that you can be in the greatest land, in the greatest country, and yet you can lose the most important thing. You can be lost in what is greatest. And it's a fear, it's a thing that we all could face and we all need to watch out for. And Jesus begins in this chapter, in chapter Luke 15, he begins with people that get lost. They get lost out in the field. I call this being lost in the field. Jesus begins with this in Luke chapter 15. It says, "Now all the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to Jesus, and the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, 'This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them.'" Well, these people were lost in the field. And so he told them this parable, which of one of you, having 100 sheep and losing one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? When he has found it, he lays it's on its shoulders and rejoices. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and neighbors, saying to them, 'Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that was lost.' Just so I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who need no repentance." Wow. You know what? It's easy to become lost in the field. This sheep, it was part of the shepherd's fold. It was part of the group. It was part of the kingdom there. But something happened. Maybe it got looking out and thinking, "Oh, life is so much better on the other side of the fence," and it wandered out. It got lost in the field. You know, there's a lot of you have people and you have children and you have parents that once were serving God, but today they're lost in the field. Well, you know what, folks? Lost is lost. And this one sheep was lost in the field. And there's people that get lost in the field. They get away from God. And it's no fun being lost, I'll tell you. When I was 1967, I lived in Quebec. My dad was a part of the Expo, the World Fair. In 1967, we had people come visit us. All of our relatives came and visited us. And we had relatives from the United States come to visit us. My cousin, he was quite a bit younger than me. He would have probably been 5. I was 8. You can do the math. And so I wanted to take my cousin for a walk around the block. I think maybe I was told to take my cousin for a walk around the block. I was told we're not to go any farther than the block. See, down the street there was a field. Way down the street there was a field. And in that field was a carnival. How many know kids like carnivals? Oh, yeah. And so on, I thought nobody will know. Nobody will know. And so I took my little kid cousin, and we went for our walk, and we somehow or other, you know what? It just happened. I don't know how. We ended up at the carnival, walking down the midway, looking at the games and the rides and all this kind of stuff. And I turned around. My cousin was gone. And I'm looking for my cousin, and I can't find him anywhere. And this cop car goes by, and I look, and in the back window is my cousin smiling and waving at me, driving out of the park in the back of a cop car. So I went home, and I was asked the obvious question, "Where's your cousin?" Well, he's in a police car. Now, my cousin's parents, my aunt and uncle, had polio when they were young. Thank God we have vaccines that eradicate these diseases out of our lives. I want to tell you. Because if you've ever had anybody in your family that's just had a brush with polio, they know it. I had an uncle who was almost crippled because of polio. My aunt and her husband, had polio when they were children, and they were left without the ability to speak and without the ability to hear. So when I come home without their little boy, who is their only contact, he is their voice, and he is their interpreter to the outside world, and they can only read my lips, and all they see is, He was in a cop car. I saw the look of absolute terror on their face that I will never forget. Terror. And I'll tell you, I also saw the look of anger on my dad's face that I will never forget. And so we went out there. They got on the phone. He was in a police station. We went down there. I was in trouble. I was in so deep. And he's sitting on a bench with an ice cream cone. You know, God comes looking for those who are lost in the field. But it's not terror that motivates him. It's love. Okay, it's love. It's love. It's love that motivates God looking for you if you're lost in the field. If you used to be serving God and you're not serving him now, God is looking for you. What is Jesus doing right now? The Bible tells us he's looking for those who are lost in the field. And if that's you, what is it that you do? Jesus says there's more joy in heaven over one of you that comes and says, I'm going to turn around, I'm going to change, I'm going to start serving God again, than over all of those that are already in the kingdom. What do you need to do? You need to turn. You need to come back to the Lord. Lost in the field. There's another parable that goes on in Luke chapter 15, and it talks about being lost in the house. And this is in the lost coin. It says, or what woman having 10 silver coins, as she loses one of them, does not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? When she has found it, she calls together her friends and neighbors and says, rejoice with me, for I have found the coin that I have lost. Just so I tell you, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. Folks, you can be lost in the field, but you can also be lost in the house. You can be sitting in church under my voice for 100 years, and you can still be lost. You can still be lost. There are people that are lost in the house. You know what? They may come to church. They may like the music. They may come because they feel it's the right thing to do. You may have gone through all of the right rituals. And you know what? The rituals, they're fine, but they won't save you. They can't. They don't have the power to do that. You may have gone through or been at the things that people say that you would be at, but you can still be lost in the house if you are detached from Jesus. When you think about your relationship, a relationship with a husband and wife, what builds that relationship? Well, you got to communicate. That means that you have to talk. You have to talk to each other. Once in a while, it's good. And not only do you have to talk, but it's important that you listen. Now, guys, she will tell you that. She will ask, are you listening? That builds relationship, doesn't it? We know that in our home. If we don't talk to each other, if we don't listen to it, we become detached, don't we? And then there's something else that builds relationships. That's doing things for each other. Isn't that right? Showing each other that we care, serving each other, doing good things for one another. Could you vacuum? How many like vacuuming? Okay, well, you could come to my house. Doing those little things. Not because we have to, but because we care. Serving one another. Giving to one another our time. Those types of things. And then talking to each other. You know, when you start talking to somebody, it's not very long. If they're in a good relationship, they'll start saying, well, you know, my husband, blah, 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 blah. Or, you know, my wife, she likes this, blah, 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 blah. And you get the scoop from the other side because that other side is connected to them and it's important in their lives. And folks, people that are lost in the house don't have that kind of connection with Jesus. That is, they're not in his word and reading it. So they're not listening to him. And they don't have a prayer life. They're not communicating with him. And they're not doing and giving to him in maybe their time or using their gifts to serve him in some way or his people. They're just not, they're disengaged. And they're not talking with him. And those are the things that we say, in our courses. And when you go to the open door, we say, here's how we kind of measure whether a person is really spiritually mature and walking with the Lord. Are they listening to Jesus by reading his word? Are they talking to Jesus by developing a prayer life every day? Are they using their gifts and giving something to Jesus and back to Jesus in return? Are they talking about Jesus and having spiritual conversations with people that don't know the Lord? Because those are the things that people do who are in love and who are in relationship. And you know what? It's easy to hide in a church, isn't it? It's easy to hide in the shadows or in the corner somewhere. And I hope that today, just in these few minutes, I'm taking a flashlight like that lady and I'm shining it into some of the corners. And if you're there, what is it? What is it that you need to do? You need to come out and you need to embrace Christ. You need to ask him for his forgiveness and give yourself back to him again, because you can be lost in the house. And the last thing that Jesus talks about is being lost in the world. I'm not going to read the whole story because I'm getting hungry for a hamburger. But it's the story of the prodigal son. And he says to his dad, I don't want anything. I don't want to have anything to do with you or your stuff or your religion or your farm. I want my share of the inheritance, which is insulting. If my kid came to me and said, Dad, give me your share of the inheritance, I'd say, yeah, okay, come on over and get it. Because you ain't getting nothing. I'm spending your side right now. It's gone. Which is insulting. And he takes off. And he gets out into the world. And he starts drinking and partying. And he starts smoking marijuana because it's legal now. Woohoo! And pretty soon, it's all gone. And all his buddies are gone. And somebody says, hey, why don't you try this meth? It's really cool. And he ends up being a meth head because all you need to do is do that once and you're cooked, because it just destroys the chemicals in your body. I mean, what did you expect Tide would do? And he ends up in the gutter, literally, looking at pig slop and thinking, I haven't had a meal in so long. I'm going to eat that. It doesn't have to get that bad to be lost in the world, does it? I mean, we're seeing the extreme example of being lost in the world in Jesus' story here. And this guy is broken, and he is painful. And that's what the world will give to you, will hand to you, brokenness and pain. That's what being lost in the world is going. That's the only place it goes. That's it. And it says something I like. It says, he came to his senses. Maybe you're lost in the world and you need to come to your senses. Unfortunately, for most people that are lost in the world, it isn't until they begin to experience the pain and the brokenness that they begin to think, you know, there's something better than this. You come to your senses. It says he came to his senses. And so he comes to his senses and he says, you know what? I need to go home. I need to go to the Father. But I don't know if he'll receive me. That's how people feel when they're lost in the world. That they'll never be good enough for us. They really believe that. It's a lie. It's a lie. But that's how they feel. That God will never accept me. And this is what this guy feels. And so here's what he says. He says, when he came to his senses, he said, man, I'm dying of hunger here. I'll go to my father, and I'll say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands. So he set off and went to his father. And that's how people feel when they're lost in the world. They feel that they have blown it, and they can never get to the place where everybody else is. And if you're lost in the world, I want to tell you that's a lie. Because when they come to God, or when they look at the church, or they look at Christians, they think, I'm being judged. I'm not going to be accepted. That's a lie. That's a lie. Here's what happens. The exact opposite. Not what they expect. Not what this young guy expected. But while he was still far off, his father saw him, was filled with compassion, ran, put his arms around him, and kissed him. Then the son said to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his slaves, quick, bring out a robe, bring out the best one, put it on him, put a ring on his fingers, sandals on his feet, and get the fattened calf, kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son or daughter of mine that was dead is alive again. He that was lost has been found. And they began to celebrate. If you're lost in the world, God doesn't care where you've been. He cares where you're going. And when you come to him, you don't face judgment and punishment. You face love and acceptance and an embrace. People get lost. We live in a great country, and God gives us his kingdom full of great blessings, forgiveness and faith and love and joy and peace. But you can get lost. And you need to be found. You need to come back to him. So I ask you today, are you lost in the field? You were serving God, but you need to get back to him. Are you lost in the house? You come to church here, but you've never committed your life to Jesus. You need to do that. Or are you lost in the world? And you're sitting in church saying, I know these people wouldn't like me. I'll tell you, I know some of these people, they might have been worse than you. Ooh, we got some bad dudes hanging around us. They were lost in the world. But God has completely changed them. And the same God that loves and accepts them loves and accepts you today when you come back to him. Say, Lord, forgive my sins. I give myself to you. I want to serve you. I'm going to ask the worship team to come back. And there's that song, My Kingdom Here. We sang that. Build your kingdom in this place. If you'd like prayer today, after the service, I'm going to just hang around the front if you would just like prayer. But I want to pray for you right now. We have people in our church that are telling me that they're going through a renewal in their lives. They kind of got out in the field a little bit, and they realized it, and they're renewing their lives, and we have that reporting to us even now. We have people who are intentionally making a new commitment to their lives to Christ, some for the first time. They've been around church for a bit. They knew they were lost in the house, and they're intentionally making decisions to follow Jesus. That's exciting. Do you know what else is exciting? We have people who are lost in the world coming to know God. It takes a while. It takes a while. But you make the start, and you experience his love. And you experience it for the first time. You find out it's real, and it's true, and it's deep, and you are loved. You respond to God, and he'll respond to you. So let's stand together. I'm going to pray. I'm going to pray. And if you're in that category today, I want you to just make this your prayer. Dear Jesus, I've gotten away. I've gotten out in the field. I got lost in the field, Lord. I got away from you. Or I've been in your house. I've been going to church, but Lord, I've been holding back. I haven't been serving you. I haven't been building that relationship with you, talking to you, listening to you, serving you. Or Lord, I'm a worldly man. I'm a worldly woman. And there's that part of me that says I'm not good enough. But your word, your Bible, Jesus says, I don't have to be. I'm loved and accepted. So, Lord, I give my life to you again. I come to you today, Jesus, and I ask you forgive my sins and help me to follow you for the rest of my life. Help me to serve you and love you. In Jesus' name, amen.
We hope you enjoyed this week's message. If you would like to know more about our church, visit kingsvillechurch.com. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to join us next week.